I was away for a couple of days for the first time in over a year. It was such a good opportunity to be on the road, and it felt so good. It also gave me a chance to catch up on no less than 8 books in one 2 hour drive. And that's because I was using this incredible app called Blinkist. It's hard to find the time to sit down and read and learn more. So when you don't have that free time, you can't read or work on your personal development. That's really annoying. Blinkist is really unique, and it works on your phone, your tablet, or your web browser. Blinkist takes the best key takeaways, the need to know information from thousands of nonfiction books and condenses them down to just 15 minutes each that you can read or listen to. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/reach. Try it free for 7 days and save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist. Blinkist.com/reach to start your free 7-day trial. And you'll also save 25% off, but only when you go and sign up right now at Blinkist.com/reach. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday night's after show. What a fantastic week it has been. It's ending in a big way. Hi, LB. How are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to
Got
be
a big
here.
smile on your face. That's fantastic. Hi, Greg. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I can't help but notice that we often wear all black, and today, without planning it, we are all wearing blue. I don't know what that means, but I feel
Very
like it's a good
true.
time.
Very observant of you. We have a little Santa as our mascot today. Although maybe halfway through the show I'll remove him because it's a little flippant. But it is kind of fun because it felt like Christmas, didn't it? Yes, to this morning and last night felt like Christmas. You know, firstly, we got the big news about Konstantin Kalimnik, which was not news to any of us, but news perhaps to other people. And it was good. It was good to finally find out officially from the Treasury Department, of all places, that this man was in fact handing over campaign research to the Russian intelligence services, which we suspected all along was what was going on. But it was nice to have that in black and white and kind of a fun way for the Biden administration to sneak it to us. Greg, what was your reaction when you saw that?
I honestly thought we already knew this. I did. I'm like, I had to go back and look and say, what exactly about this is new? And I guess it was we knew that Paul Manafort, the chair of the Trump campaign, was besties and working hand in glove with Konstantin Kalimnik, a Russian intelligence officer who specializes in election fuckery, We knew that, actually that should be a semicolon. We knew that Paul Manafort gave him data, polling data,
Right.
but I guess some people didn't make the intellectual leap that after the Russian intelligence officer got the polling data from the chair of the Trump campaign, he then, brace yourself for news, gave it to his fucking bosses.
Oh,
I mean, can you believe
shocking. I
that
had
the
no
Russian
idea that they'd even
intelligence
think about
officer,
things.
having gotten this piece of intelligence, actually then gave it to someone who could analyze the intelligence?
Amazing.
It's crazy.
It's
Actually did his
crazy
job.
that we couldn't figure that out. How
I
could we have
don't know.
ever deduced?
It's so weird to
Yeah.
me that happened, that now there's confirmation that the guy whose job it is to do the thing did the thing.
And, you know, at least we know Russians did their job, and they should be grateful that we know that. It's also interesting to me that we knew all along that Oleg Deripaska was also involved in this whole thing. And Mr. Deripaska has a long history with the GRU, even though he's not officially their employee, he still is sort of their employee. So, I'm surprised that sort of wasn't factored into the whole thing as well, because Deripaska himself is considered a spy and working for the spy services.
Yes, he
So,
is.
but it was cute. I mean, I must say, whoever put it in there, the way they did it, must have known us pretty well, must know us pretty well, because it was the kind of thing that, over the last few years, I don't know if you guys have experienced the same thing. I'm sure you have. We're just dying for a piece of information just to help you finish a story. And then someone on Twitter just shows up with it. And you're like, I wonder where that came from. Because, it's just sort of interesting. And it's always an open source. It's nothing like clandestine going on. It's always just, here's a little bit of information. And if you knew what you were looking at, you'd say, oh, that is really important. And in this case, it was the kind of thing that, only people who are so geeked into this world of Trump Russia would have found that line even remotely interesting, because most people wouldn't even know who Konstantin Kilimnik is. So I think it was interesting the way they did it. I think it was a bit of a nod to everyone who'd been researching this project for so long.
Maybe. Look, I'm involved in my own stuff and have been for a while, where I unpack, a century's worth of history and characters around organized crime, our organized crime gangsters, from the original ones to even their cohorts, and how that all evolved into transnational, what's called now transnational organized crime. It's always been transnational. Shocker, breaking news. Heroin isn't grown in Manhattan. It had to, it had to come in from somewhere overseas, probably. So it's always been this way. But, the Treasury Department they are our great, great hunters of criminals. They really are. They always have been. For the last 100 years, they established their own intelligence operations before we had any official intelligence agencies within our government. It was all the Treasury. This is what the Treasury does. They hunt the money. They track this shit down. If criminals aren't in the business and industries that they're in, even spy criminals, they're not in it for no money, especially nowadays, right? So Deripaska isn't doing his shit because he's a patriot. He's a gangster. He's a mobster. And the Treasury is always been in there, in the money, watching the flow of money, and then understanding that if you want to stop these fuckers, what you have to do is cut off their money, cut off their flow of money. And that's how you actually disrupt an operation, because no one's going to go through this insane business of whether it's the rape trade, or it's human trafficking, or it's arms trafficking, or the movement of nuclear material, or even counterfeit goods, cigarettes. No one's going to go through any of that if there's not vast sums of money on the other side. And then they're not going to even go through with that if they can't use that money. So the Treasury is the very tip of the spear in terms of how we can disrupt and also how we can investigate. So, it's great. The team men are back, right? They're back. Steve Mnuchin's out of there, right? Because it's all under the IRS. Yeah, he's out of there. And in come the real inspector, the real investigators that now can have their voice again, and they put this information out. I know that there's been some questioning of, and I think this is a good line of questioning of, have they always known this? The answer to that is yes, of course they've always known it. They've known it as long as we've known it, because this is what spies do. And because anybody who had any semblance of who Paul Manafort is, and what he was doing in Ukraine before he came and did it here for Donald Trump understands who and what Konstantin Kilimnik is, and what the Russian intelligence services are up to when it comes to other nation states and the fuckery in their elections. This is known. We're not making this stuff up. We weren't making it up then. We're not making it up now. We've just been coalescing the information and bringing the story to people so they can understand and wrap their mind around it. The other group that has always known who and what Donald is, who and what Paul Manafort was, what that whole thing was about with his campaign, with Donald's campaign, and what they were up to, specifically what they were up to, is everyone involved in the RNC and all the Republicans, from elected officials to political operatives like Kellyanne Conway, who were part and parcel of the presidential campaign, of the Republican National Convention and in 2016, and what they were putting on their docket, all the changing of the Ukraine policy on Ukraine, all that. These people always knew.
Yep.
They're the ones who hired Fusion GPS to begin with. Mm-hmm. They're the one who knew he was in with organized crime, Donald Trump. They're the one that knew that Donald Trump was a Kremlin asset. They have known from the very beginning.
Yep, 100%.
They have always known.
100%.
Can I push back on something here, just to be fair? Steve Mnuchin, when he was at Treasury, did follow the money. He went to Fort Knox and followed the money and was waiting for the eclipse light beam to radiate onto the gold bar.
Yeah,
like sort of like in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You wanted to make sure there was gold there, you know. He's the Treasury Secretary. He should make sure that it's there. Yeah. And also how he could get to it if he needed in a hurry. It's what you're saying about the GOP is 100% correct. I mean, clearly, anyone who's been paying any attention to this, and especially people who are inside the GOP, would know that Russia has been all over them with their rubles and bitcoins for decades. And it's not new to them, and it shouldn't be news to them that this is in fact what's been going on in their party. They've turned into a mob organization. They are an organized criminal organization. That's what they are. That's what America has given the grand old party, a brand new remake, a brand new brand, and it's basically the mob. So that's what we're stuck with now until we get rid of them. But we're doing a good job so far. Well, maybe we could do a little better.
Maybe we should pronounce it the GOP.
The GOP,
like mob, GOP. You know, and put it in lowercase instead of GOP with these big capital letters.
It's just
let's lowercase them.
Yeah, they really don't. I'm so sick of them. I'm sick of them because they really annoy you. And then
they're as annoying as Gwyneth Paltrow. We could put an O in there and call them poop, and then maybe come up with a very smelly candle. You know, maybe it's Maria Butina's personal smell instead of Gwyneth Paltrow's. You can buy a goop candle.
Butina enthusiast. I heard that term for the first time.
You know?
Oh,
or really? Tom Cotton.
Does Tom Cotton have a smell?
Oh, that lady had a moment this week.
Who, Butina?
Arms. No, Tom Cotton.
Oh, that lady.
Goodness.
No, so you had I didn't know. What did I miss this week? Did I miss something on Miss Cotton?
Miss Cotton, she had a little tantrum, and because what was it? Was Mark Warner was saying, because they were trying to confirm someone. Of course, it was a woman of color. Of course, I think in the Justice Department, and Mark Warner was like, "Can you please let her answer the question?" And he was like, he Lindsey Graham'd out. He lady Cotton'd out on Mark Warner. And, he got all ruffled, and then he went and did a speech, and he was very...
it seems ridiculous that he's so upset about these things. We have to appoint people, and they aren't all going to be white. It's just the nature of things. Mr. Cotton.
It's his job. It's their job to just do this stupid shit. That's all they have. Yeah. They have this performative shit, this act that they do, and that's literally all they do. It's the shell game. They're creating this noise so that we look at them and not all the fucking money that's being stolen out the back door. That's what it is. That's all that it is. Every time these assholes go up and say something, Marjorie and the other one voting against the cancer thing this week, it's just performative. That's all that it is. They just 100%. Want us to pay attention to it and get enraged. And, that's it. I'm
beginning to think the Matt Gaetz thing was a big distraction, but we'll wait to see if that really turns into something bigger. I think it might.
Know. Yeah.
You're going to do a little performance for us, the two of you. I was excited to hear. I was invited. So
is it time?
I mean, I would like to see it. I've got some big news on Eric Prince coming up, but we're going to hold the audience for that.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do a performance because it is in this general wheelhouse.
And I think it will transition quite well. So I'm going to turn the cameras over to you. There's a little script on the side here, which I think will work, and I'll enjoy the show.
All right. Oh, good. Okay, so just to set this up, Greg Olear, this fabulous director of plays, is and I are going to do a dramatic reading of the transcript that was recorded from the 2016 of Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy and a woman named something Rogers, who's a congresswoman who actually had, I just discovered this, Liz Cheney. She's from Washington, I think she had, the position Liz Cheney has in the House now. This woman Rogers had it before Liz Cheney. So she was a big, important figure, probably still is, as a congressperson. We just don't hear about her that often. And everybody knows this is yet another one of the sort of gaslighting or distracto ways that the media reported on this particular conversation, because in it, Kevin McCarthy has that fabulous line. I will try to deliver it with as much Kevin McCarthy as I can, about who Putin pays, right? But what I want to bring to everybody's attention, and I've been trying to bring this to people's attention, and it very much ties into what we've gotten out of the Konstantin Kilimnik revelation, which wasn't a revelation, out of the Treasury Department this week, is that the Republican leadership, especially in the House, knew full well what Paul Manafort had done in Ukraine for Vladimir Putin to help install and continue to corrupt the politics on behalf of Putin's puppet at that time, Viktor Yanukovych. So that's the discussion, everybody, that they're having. And that discussion did not get covered, only the end piece. But now, knowing what you all know, knowing what everybody knows, now that Rachel Maddow believes that Konstantin Kilimnik was a spy and therefore would have delivered. It's unbelievable. She finally made the leap that the spy is taking the spy stuff to the spy place that he works. I think it's important for everyone to hear this conversation and really take in and understand what the Republicans knew and when they knew it, which is everything. Okay, so I'm going to be everybody but Paul Ryan. And Mr. Olear is going to be Paul.
And I'm going to be Paul Ryan, so I have my prop here. Okay.
Okay. Unidentified individual. Kevin had the Ukrainian Prime Minister this morning.
Oh, so he did. I just left him in the healthcare.
Okay.
This guy's a good guy. This guy's a pretty good guy.
Okay, now I'm Rogers. Oh, I forgot to do my thing. Sorry, everybody. She has short hair. Here. Okay. Is this the guy who's been there a while?
No, he's new. He was the speaker of the...
Their other prime minister got kicked out, right?
Right. This guy's like the anti-corruption guy. This guy's there because he's the anti-corruption guy. He was the speaker...
Oh, okay.
And he's the one who was working on the amendments to the Constitution, independent judiciary.
Okay.
They got that in now. He's passing all these anti-corruption laws.
How are things going in Ukraine?
Like that?
How are things going in Ukraine?
Well, the Russians are bombing them 30, 40 shells a day, and the people, Crimea is gone, and they're trying to clean up the government to show that they want to be Western. So they're trying to prove to the Western world that they want to be Western or Westernizing so they can get support to get their country back. Everybody talks a good game on what they're doing, but he's passed all these anti-corruption laws. The question is, are they, executing? I think by the summer they'll have it all done.
Did he talk about their economy?
Yeah, this is about getting actual growth and not graft growth. So, no, it's not good, but...
I went there a year ago. It was like, wow. These people are living... They're on the front lines. They're fighting for their freedom. It's their independence. He has this really interesting riff about people have said that they have Ukraine fatigue, and it's really Russian fatigue, because what Russia is doing to us, financing our populace, financing people in our government to undo our governments, messing with our oil and gas energy. All the things Russia does to basically blow up our country, they're just going to roll right through us and go to the Baltics and everyone else. Yes!
So we should not have Ukraine fatigue. We should have Russia fatigue.
Yes! The propaganda. My big takeaway from that trip was just how sophisticated the propaganda was.
It's very sophisticated.
Coming out of Russia and Putin.
Very sophisticated.
Not just in Ukraine. They were once funding the NGOs in Europe. They attacked fracking.
Correct.
Russia TV, I was not, I hadn't tuned into Russia TV until that trip. It's frightening.
So he's saying they're doing this throughout Europe. So this isn't just about Ukraine.
So yeah, it is a way. It's really a messaging. It's a propaganda war.
Russia is trying to turn Ukraine against itself.
Yes, and it's sophisticated, and it's
maniacal.
Yes.
And guess who's the only one taking a strong stand up against it? We are.
We're not, but we're not.
Here comes McCarthy.
I'll guarantee you that's what it is. The Russians hacked the DNC and got the Oppo research that they had on Trump.
The Russians hacked the DNC
to get Oppo
on Trump and delivered it to who?
There's two people, I think, Putin pays. Rohrabacher and Trump. Swear to God. Rohrabacher and Trump. Swear to God.
This is an off the record. No leaks. All right. This is how we know we're a real family here.
That's how you know that we're tight.
What's said in the family stays in the family. And so.
Wow, so multi-talented. Very, very well done.
Yeah.
All right, enough of that. Well, that's really good. Very good. The McCarthy line there was really well delivered. Really well delivered.
Thank you.
So basically what you're saying is that they knew all along. They're just sort of adopted it as their own policy. Because the Russians were doing so well at it. Why not take it as their own?
Yeah. They knew it. They knew Paul Manafort had run this. They knew Paul Manafort was now running the Trump campaign. They knew all about Ukraine. They knew that it was Russia and Putin. They knew that there was a very sophisticated propaganda machine.
Which they couldn't quite figure out, but they knew it existed, and that would be nice to have.
That's right. And everyone should remember at this time, too, Kellyanne Conway was coming on to the Trump campaign or had been on there. They were about to head into their convention, or it was right around the time of their convention where they're changing. They knew this, then went in and changed the Ukraine policy. And there's the Russian ambassador Kislyak, right? And Paul Manafort and these Ukrainians that were corrupt and these Russians that were everywhere. And they knew what it meant to have Russians influencing changing of Ukraine policy. They understood all of this, all of it. They also knew what Cambridge Analytica was. They knew how, when it went from Manafort to Bannon. And I remember the reaction that everybody had in the media of the time of what, Bannon? He's like a publisher of Breitbart. What does he know about running a campaign? Well, if you understood that Steve Bannon was part of Cambridge Analytica, and Cambridge Analytica in terms of running an influence op, right, on the American electorate, district by district. And then you also understood that Kalimnik's not going to know what a certain district in Wisconsin might be vulnerable to. He needs that information from quote unquote pollsters. Polling data is voter data, right? They had all the Facebook accounts. They had all this stuff. Manafort, right before he gets kicked out and Bannon comes in, Manafort's giving this data to Kalimnik. He's giving voter data. He's saying, here's what we know about the people in these districts. But it's only going to be meaningful to Kalimnik as well because you have Reince Priebus, you have the RNC, and you have Kellyanne Conway, who understand where the leverage points are within Republican districts in the Rust Belts and across the country that they might be able to influence and swing stuff, or repress the black vote, which was a big part of what Cambridge Analytica was up to. Don't let, in Michigan, make sure you keep people home. That messaging needs to go out there. So the nuances of the American electorate are going to be coming from the RNC, are going to be coming from the Paul Manaforts. And Manafort was from Ukraine to here, maybe not as up to speed with everything, but they had, Kellyanne Conway, who had worked with Cambridge Analytica when she was on Ted Cruz's campaign. Now she's over with Donald Trump. And you have Reince Priebus, who runs the entire RNC. And you have people like Paul Ryan, who knows what a hand he had in all of that, but he certainly understood all the dynamics. And he was the head of the House at that point in terms of the Republican Party.
Manafort had worked for politics in Washington since
for
dawn of man. It's like, he's been around.
Exactly. He's been around. It made sense to put him in there, although those of us who understood who he was were like, holy shit, torturous lobby guys and running the Donald Trump case. This is a guy who works for gangsters all over the world and very corrupt regimes, and had just come out of Ukraine working for Putin on behalf of Putin, and those people in that conversation are acknowledging that. So then we get to that. Manafort's out because the Deripaska stuff is threatening to leak, and in comes Steve Bannon, and it looks like a weird thing. But if you understand that what all these people are talking about and what the whole strategy for Donald winning was to have the Kremlin's participation, aid, and help in running influence operations like they had run in Ukraine, specific targeted influence operations down to the district, down to the voter, showing up in people's fucking phones, for God's sakes, everybody, onto their Facebook page, onto drilling in with the propaganda, just as you heard Ms. Rogers explain there, and Paul Ryan acknowledged that he understood, right? That's what was happening. Then Bannon, that's what the panic was. If Manafort's out, because he's the guy who knows how to run these sophisticated influence ops on the Kremlin's behalf, and he's the one connected to the Kremlin, if he's out, who can come in and take his place in terms of running this? Because it wasn't going to be Brad Parscale and Jared Kushner, no matter how much they wanted everyone to think they're geniuses. You need to have somebody in there who understands how to actually run these influence operations when it comes to propaganda that's generated out of a troll farm. And because of his long-term, and how to do the demographics and targeting through the social media, because of Steve Bannon's founding of Cambridge Analytica, he had very intimate knowledge about how that all would work, and he became the natural person to replace. If we look at that campaign as an influence operation backed by the Kremlin, which is really essentially what the Treasury Department came out and confirmed this week, then all of it makes sense. All of it.
Yeah, I mean, it sure is clear that that's what they were after, was that influence capability. Go ahead, Greg. I was going to jump into something, but go ahead.
Oh, just a quick takeaway. I mean, we have a tendency to sort of cast most of the blame on the usual suspects here, the real obvious traitors. But like you said, LB, Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the fucking House. He knew exactly what was going on. Not only that, during the first 2 years, he kept Devin Nunes as the chair of the Intelligence Committee in the House.
That's right.
He was part of the gang of it. So Paul Ryan is absolutely just as complicit as Nunes and any of these other fucking traitors. And he left to spend more time with his family or whatever the fuck it was. That
Join
guy
Fox News.
is guilty. He's whatever everybody else is guilty of, he is also guilty of. He left. I guess it wasn't the masturbatory fun he got out of denying people health care wasn't enough for him. He needed to try his hand at something more evil, I suppose. But they like to pretend that guy is somehow a policy wonk and some sort of genius. And he's a dipshit idiot. And he's just as evil as the rest of them, despite his whatever.
It's so true. I mean, you can
the way you know is that he still thinks Ayn Rand is great, even though he's not in 8th grade.
Exactly. And, and Kellyanne Conway, I'm sorry. This is like the other thing about this that was so frustrating for us. We've been seeing all of you in our audience. We've been seeing all of you, tweet our stuff and some of you sending us DMs and, oh, you must feel so good about the fact that it's all now confirmed yet again for the 8,000th time. And I don't. I feel numb. I feel exhausted. I had to take a nap today because it just is so much for to just sort of think that how hard this has been to try to get this narrative out when we could have had the fourth estate helping us, and they're now taking this position. And Greg and I talked about this earlier today of like, okay, so you have the gun. That's a murder. The murder was our republic, was this campaign, right? And the Kremlin's help, the collusion, right? Which was really just a conspiracy and accepting foreign aid and help that instrumentally moved the election for Donald Trump. Okay. So do we prove that? Can we prove that? Will Mueller prove that? Oh, we don't have the proof yet. Okay. Fusion GPS has all this stuff, and the Republicans paid for it, but they must not know any of this. All this gaslighting, all this horse shit that we've been subjected to all this time coming from our media. And so my question is, who was on the phone with them, aggressing them away from all of this evidence? Because here's what we had. If it was a murder in that metaphor, I'm sorry, I know we have a lot of gun violence right now, guys, but I'm going to go for this because it's the best metaphor I have. I could use a knife. I don't know. So you've got the gun. It's still hot. You've got fingerprints on the gun. You know whose fingerprints they are, and you actually have the gun registration registered to the Kremlin. You have the bullets, right? And Donald, co-ownership. You have the bullets that came out of the body. You have the dead body. You have the shot body. Oh, we've got that. We've got the bullets. We have the forensic evidence. We know that this was all exactly what we said it was. Now we also have the footage. We have a camera. We saw it all. Remember that? We saw Kalimnik. We saw they're in the, we have Helsinki. We have the footage of the whole thing. We can watch it over and over and over again. We can keep watching this thing. And we have the signed confession, right? Transcripts of them having the conversation of what they actually did. We've got all of that. And yet they couldn't report on it like this because there's something mysterious still that we didn't know. So my question is, well, who's calling you, telling you can't report on this way? Because they knew. Is it the murderer? Are you taking calls from Kellyanne Conway and she's aggressing you, or the attorneys for the murder, or Donald himself saying, you better not say that. You can't say that. You can't conclude that. Who was in there with our big news organizations really pressuring them not to report on this appropriately? I think it was the murderers.
Well, they all would have said, we have, the Mueller's still out there investigating. You can't reach that conclusion until Mueller has spoken, or something to that effect. I mean, that would have been an approach of theirs. And of course, why wouldn't they try that? Saying, you can't make
why are
any
you
of those
listening
judgments.
to it?
Why you're listening to it is the problem.
Why are you listening to it? Why are you listening to the murderers?
Well, this notion of balance, this ridiculous notion of balance. It's somehow Americans feel like balance is going to solve this problem. Balance introduces a bunch of nonsense into the news. Because there's either the story or there's not the story. If you're going to tell the story, but then you have to include the not the story part of it for balance, guess what you get? You get a whole bunch of lies stuck in the middle of the news because anyone can give you whatever they want. So the GOP can sit there and say, well, it wasn't a meeting, we were dancing or whatever, and then get away with it because it's an alternative opinion. It's another way of looking at things, and supposedly it gives you balance. It does not give you balance at all. It just introduces another factor into the story and actually takes away from this idea of truth, which is really, there's mostly it's kind of easy to figure out what the actual timeline was and what the events were. It was pretty easy to figure all that out. It was pretty clear what was going on. It didn't require a lot of surgery or brain surgery or a lot of sourcing from these clandestine sources. It really didn't need all of that. Everything was out there in the open source. You could just put it together, present it. But because they felt like they needed this alternative, or at least a balanced point of view, they'd go out to the GOP or they'd go out to the Trump administration and say, well, tell us, what do you think? And suddenly they have to incorporate that into their story and push it out to the masses, creating enough confusion for everybody to just delay the truth from becoming apparent to everybody. It's really a big challenge in the news business.
The level of gaslighting, and I know that we want to get to your Prince thing, but quickly, the level of gaslighting, like looking back on it now, I went back and read through my book today a little bit just to see how much I got in there. And there's a lot of things that I missed, but at the end of the day, like at that time, we weren't trying to say, here's the overarching plot. The Republican Party is doing this, and there's Q&A. Facebook is that. We didn't know the extent of it yet, but they met with Russians and lied about it over and over and over. It was such a basic gaslighting. Like, they met with Russians, people in the campaign met with Russians during the campaign,
Kremlin,
during the
not just Russia.
transitions. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kremlin,
spies.
people close ties to Putin
Yeah.
through the
Operatives
campaign,
for him.
through the transition, after he became president, all throughout that period. This is not something that's supposed to happen. And then they fucking lied about it. I have a thread. I'm not going to
Under
read
oath.
it now, but I've got a thread on the Twitters of quotes of all of these people just fucking lying about it. No, it's not true. It's not this. And to your point, Zeb, they showed this shit. These lies. They're fucking lies. Yes, you did. People in your campaign did. Paul Manafort on TV saying, well, there's no contact with the Russians. Your guy that you work with is a fucking KGB dude, man. What are you talking about?
I mean,
Manafort is a Russian operative. That's who he works for. He was running the campaign.
Matt Gaetz being like,
it's done. That's the story.
I'm a celibate, Matt Gaetz. No, you're not. We know that that's not the case here, man. We're not dumb. But the level of gaslighting is so private, like almost the most basic fact was something that they immediately denied, which is something he did, Trump I'm talking about. The first goddamn press conference that Sean Spicer had was lying about the size of the crowd at the inauguration, which seemed ridiculous at the time, but also ominous at the time, because Trump was asking him to just create this untruth that everybody watching knew was bullshit. And he did it. And that guy's a fucking traitor too, by the way, Sean Spicer. Fuck you.
Yes, he is.
Well, we've been subjected to this like disinformation onslaught that has completely changed the reality of our existence. I mean, we just, what we know is true and real, and what they've been pushing at us, and this includes all the major networks and everybody else for the last 4 years, is just a fog. It's just a fog of information, and it's hard to tell now what
president. The president of the United States was a Kremlin asset.
Yeah, exactly.
The president of the United States was a Kremlin asset.
What won't they run? They still won't put Craig Unger's book on TV, on major networks. The one confirmation we've all been wanting about the fact that he's a Russian asset is available in those pages of that book, and Craig Unger cannot get booked at MSNBC. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be saying it. I'm just going to say it. But it's a lot of bullshit. That's not the way that organization should be running, or any TV organization should be running. Certainly not an organization that claims to be reporting the news. So they can criticize Fox News as much as they want. They're just as guilty over at MSNBC of covering up the facts. And then, there are some great voices there and some great reporters there. But it's really sad that even MSNBC has become just another corporate body of news. That there is no real independent television news in the United States. Most of it is sort of corporate controlled or advertiser controlled. And that means it's very hard to get your voice in there, especially those local TV stations like Sinclair that are owned by Sinclair. I mean, that's a Russian-owned information service that's broadcasting supper hour news into everyone's homes at 6 o'clock every night. It's just not, you don't get to win the war if that's what you're letting people do. So, speaking of, should we do Eric? There's an interesting link between Rora Basha, who you mentioned, Rora Basha, and Eric Prince. His first job in politics, not that he had many jobs in politics, but his first job was as an intern for Rora Basha, Eric Prince's first job. So that would have connected him to a lot of people. Now, this week, he got some bad news because he got fired by, he resigned. His official term is he resigned from the Frontier Services Group. This is the company he founded and which the Chinese basically back him. Billions of dollars have been fed into his organization, and they do all sorts of really shady stuff around the world. One of the things they do is resources in Africa, flying things and resources and security in Africa. But they also do some of the Uyghur camps, concentration camp builds. So they're really fine people. And they're normally okay with most things, it seems like, at the FSG, except this week something turned sour and off Eric Prince went into the sunset. This is very unusual. And I'm just going to, wait, I got to show you some things here quickly. So give me one second here. I just set up one quick shot here. So this is the timeline of events. March 8th, the United Nations panel releases a report about what they were investigating, which is a giant attempt to overthrow the United Nations government in Libya and replace them with a warlord called Khalifa Haftar. And then on March 10th, Dr. Ping Hu, he's the current CEO of FSG, resigns. That's 2 days after the UN panel releases their report. And then on April 13th, just the other day, Erik Prince resigns. Now, all of this might not seem connected, except it really is when you start reading the report, and it gets really, really fascinating because, Erik Prince has two bosses. These are his two bosses. There's Chang Xingming, who's the chair of the Frontier Services Group, who's a very good friend of President Xi. And on the other side, on his other shoulder, Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of the UAE. And basically, he does services for both of these leaders in most of these countries at the same time. Now, in this particular instance, as he headed into Libya, well, he didn't head into Libya. His mercenaries headed into Libya. He went there on behalf of the Crown Prince, Mr. bin Zayed, sorry. So that is where we are picking up the story. And I'm going to get us back on camera. So the prince of the UAE decides that he wants to overthrow the government in Libya because, of course, they want the oil, and they've always wanted the oil. And so Khalifa Haftar is the warlord that's backed by Russia and backed by the UAE. And they thought, well, they'll just send their mercenaries in to support an overthrow of the Libyan government by Haftar, and they'll install Haftar as the leader, and then they'll have control of all the oil and solve all these problems that they might be having in Libya. So they call Erik Prince. Erik Prince calls his buddy, Serge. I'm going to try to get this on camera again now. Try this way. I planned a lot for this, I promise.
Yeah, I know. You're working hard on it today.
Well, I just want to make sure it's all got out to it. So there's Christian Durand. You're missing the CH. He's a mercenary. I think he's from South Africa or somewhere around there. And he and Erik Prince do all sorts of clandestine things together, sort of as a side team. They don't do it directly for either of these companies when they do their things. But when it came to Libya, it was Lancaster 6 that they ended up hiring to do the attempted overthrow of the UN government in Libya. And that's where we pick up the story. So Greg Smith, who many of you have met on the show before, you two certainly have, was interviewed by me and Eric when Eric Garland was still on the show, talking about what was being discovered around Libya and Erik's Prince's and Christian Durand's involvement in all of that. So I'm going to play a little bit of a clip of that, and you'll pick up where we went from there. So that is also going to take me a quick second. Should have taken a break before we do this. Here we go. I think we could do it this way. And here's Prince and talking. Here's Greg Smith talking about Prince. Where they were arrested and to explain what they were doing there with all that weaponry and equipment. And so they left behind as well a lot of information around who they were. They also left a boat behind. So now the Libyan government in the United Nations is aware that there was an operation to try and unseat them involving all these mercenaries. And then they launched an investigation. And so recently they've come up to the investigation findings, and they did find that Serge was involved in at least importing illegally arms to the country. But that's where it stopped. It hasn't quite gone to Erik Prince yet. Was Erik Prince involved in this thing?
It's not plausible that Erik Prince doesn't control Lancaster 6. He's going to claim he doesn't. His attorneys, Vince Gordon in the UAE, is going to claim he doesn't. His attorneys here in the US will claim he has nothing to do with it. But what Erik does is pretty simple. He takes a company, and you have to ask three questions. The first question is, Erik, do you own that business? And he'll say, no, I don't own it. Okay, so you don't own the equity of it. Erik, do you have any financial interest in that company? I.e., do you own all the debt? Do they owe you a bunch of money? So even though you don't own the equity, do you control it? And he'll say, no, I don't own, I don't have that either. Okay, so then the third question that a smart investigator needs to ask is, have you gained any type of benefit?
And as it turns out, maybe he was gaining some benefits, because when you look at the actual report, it goes into great detail about one specific plane. They had this military plane, and it looks like, here we go again.
Yeah, it's that lightweight thing.
This was actually the bigger one. This is the one that looks like this. And so it was owned at the time of the attempted overthrow of the Libyan government by the Frontier Services Group, the same group that Erik Prince works for in China, which means here's the Chinese government discovering that one of the planes associated with them is involved in an attempted coup in Libya. And there it is in black and white all the way through the United Nations panel report, which cites Prince and Durant and everybody else for in breaking the embargo that they have against any arms entering Libya. So clearly Erik Prince and company are in deep, deep trouble there. Prince might actually be sanctioned to a tremendous amount over this. And in the report, they go through a lot of detail about how this plane hadn't transferred ownership until well after the event on July 22nd, when in fact it was being operated in June, when it was still owned by FSG. And oops is exactly right. Now, they also very nicely they show a quote in the report of Greg talking on the show. One of the quotes you heard there. And I was just interested by the fact that we titled the whole thing "Bankrolled by Beijing," which wasn't at all what they would have been investigating, but it was because we did two stories. We did a story about Erik Prince being bankrolled by Beijing, and then we did a story about him being involved in Libya, but it was all under the headline of "Bankrolled by Beijing." So maybe they read that and thought, here's the final goodbye from. This is the previous this is Prince's resignation note, or leaving the company note, and then over here, which you can't really read now, is the former CEO who resigned on March 8th. So again, to show you the way this all lined up, and I'll go full screen on this. We should have practiced this before, maybe. Here we go. So now you can hear me. And so on March 8th, the final UN panel releases their report. March 10th, the CEO resigns 2 days afterwards. So you can see how there's a definite connection. Well, not definite, very likely connection there. And then on April 13th, Erik Prince finally is forced to leave his company that he's been with for a very long time and has been funded to the tune of billions of dollars by the Chinese government. And Erik Prince is forced to resign. And that is how Erik Prince had a very, very bad week. And this is before he even faces sanctions from the United Nations, finding him guilty of breaking that embargo. So it's actually kind of big news, because Erik Prince needs that company and he needs their money for sure.
Did you show the thing that you're mentioned in the UN report? Or
I didn't show the actual paragraph. I just spoke about it, but it is in there. It's very nice.
I just want to say that's really cool, Zeb.
I was actually pretty pleased about that too. I was of all the things that I would like to have happened in the last 4 years, maybe Erik Prince leaving his job would have been among the highest. So it's not bad to be somehow involved in that. And Greg has been very forthcoming with a lot of information. So I'm glad they cited us, and I'm glad he's out of his job, because they were doing a lot of bad things. Now we might find out less about what they're doing, but when it comes to the concentration camps in the Uyghur region, it's not, it's kind of untenable what he's been up to.
He's unbelievable scumbag, but it's like epic, and he still can't. Even those pictures you're showing, he can't make his clothes fit him right. I know that feels so petty, but something's going on with that person, that human being, that's off, really off. So I don't trust that, even though he's officially out of Frontier, that there isn't some shadow company that it all got transferred over into. Let's find that out. That's what this guy does. He does do shell games with his companies and Mr. Logistics, or are you a mercenary, or are you shipping goods? And it's all this mess. I also am curious whether, because of the UN report, and because we do have a very different Treasury, head of the Treasury now, and a very different administration in that, whether something kind of trickled over to China of like, look, something's going on here with us and this guy, Erik Prince. You might not want to be
stuck in the middle of. Yeah. I'm sure that's what happens.
Might just give you a little heads up about this guy, Erik Prince. I wonder if, I don't know.
There's probably a very long list of things that Beijing and Washington have to talk about. The last thing they want is another thing on top of it. To now deal with Erik Prince in Libya is not really their core business. So I'm sure they have other issues that rather tread on. So for sure, I think that would have happened diplomatically.
Does he still live in UAE?
He still lives in UAE, and he still
didn't Biden announced this week that they were going to go through with the arms thing.
Oh, really? UAE, right? That's interesting.
And I wonder, that's also something to think about. Like,
it is something interesting. I had not even heard that.
There's no extradition, but we'll give you the arms deal, but
say goodbye to Erik.
Yeah.
Could be. It could be. It's really
It's a data
interesting. It took
point.
them
Might have nothing to do with it, but it's
I don't
a
even
data
think they
point.
spoke to the Crown Prince yet. I don't think Biden has had an official conversation with the UAE Crown Prince yet. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't happened. It's only
You're talking about MBZ? You're talking about MBZ?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
I don't think he's had an official conversation.
At Trump Tower.
That's a tricky guy right there. Yeah. That's a tricky guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that guy's the biggest challenge they have. So if they've been able to turn him by giving him the weapons, that's interesting. That's interesting.
He's deep in a lot of stuff. And not just with us and a history with us and our allies. He's a tricky guy. So that's going to be interesting how we handle him, as opposed to the Boneside, the Mohammed Boneside guy. This is just a gross son of a king who clearly is not all there anymore and very aged, but perhaps he can be replaced, or perhaps he can be put in his place because there is still a king and a monarch. This MBZ is a little trickier.
Yeah, I think MBS is fairly timid actually when it comes right down to it, but MBZ actually has big aspirations to rule the world through the fist. So they're very different. I think MBZ has MBS under his control, or at least influence. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But that was good news. That was nice to hear this week.
Yeah.
No one wants to wish anything bad on anyone, but Eric Prince should not be working for the Chinese.
I wish bad on Eric Prince. Yeah. I'm sorry.
What the hell was he doing working for the Chinese and the Trump campaign at the same time?
Come on.
That's not okay.
Yeah. And also, who decides to overthrow the government in Libya just as their job? Like, I can't even get my kids to take out the trash. He's trying to overthrow a government in Libya.
And he does it with these two shitty planes and 5 guys who get stuck on a boat, and then they get stranded, they get sent away. Their cover story sucks. It's just one of these awful stories of mission gone bad, and for what reason?
Yeah.
Could have seen that a mile away.
Pathetic and crumpled and ill-fitting and amateurish as his outfits.
Right.
It's not. It's like this is not a master of the universe, right?
No.
Something's really off with him. I'm telling you.
He's worth $4 billion. I mean, what would you need all that money for? I mean, it seems insane. You need to go and then run operations, overthrowing
I think he watched
legitimate
the James Bond movies. I think he watched the James Bond movies. The James Bond movies, Holler, and was like, I want to be that villain guy. And he doesn't understand that the villain guy winds up getting thrown into the volcano at the end of the movie,
right?
Or whatever, right? Or sucked out of the airplane, or whatever.
Also, he was also laughed at as a Marine, right? Wasn't he in the Marine Corps for a little bit there? But he wasn't really. He sort of fakes his whole career there, and sort of people laugh at him. He's a bit of a joke in the military world. No one really wants to work with him. So I think he's constantly asserting his manhood somehow through all these little projects that he has, and through his affinities for these rich men. But it's it's really not turning out well. After you should have given up by now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Maybe he and Tom Cotton can work that all out somewhere. I don't know.
Gosh,
sorry.
They have retreats for that kind of thing, I think. Hey, what about Maria Butina? I don't know.
What about
Butina.
her?
I don't know. I was asked to throw up some pictures of Maria Butina, and I'm not sure which Maria you're wanting as a picture here.
I don't know. I felt like we have to. There's so much going on in the news. Mike Pence got a pacemaker installed. I feel like the late night writers are up late trying to come up with a.
You want this Butina, or do you want this Butina?
Any Butina is fine.
Look at this Butina, the sad and forlorn one when she's in prison, or go with the first one.
Where's the prison one? No, there's a good prison one. That's hardcore. I like the hardcore.
I don't have that one. The only other two I've got is her as Pippi Longstockings. And then she's
is that Torsion? Is that
that's Torsion on the other side. Let me
leave that one. That's the one we want. I want to talk about. Again, we know that the quarantine is coming to an end, and the way that we know is that the United States is once again mass shooting, making up for lost time with the goddamn mass shootings. And I don't want to make light of this because it's obviously a horrible tragedy, but it's so fucking avoidable. And everybody in the country knows how to avoid part of it, which is banning the damn AR-15s and the assault weapons, right? 90 some odd percent of Americans want this to happen. So why hasn't it happened? Obama tried. He's not a guy that is emotional, and Obama got emotional trying to make this work and was unable to make it work. The stranglehold that's being placed on this is from the Republican senators especially. That's Mitch McConnell, who won't let them vote on any of these bills. So every time there's a shooting, understand the NRA, which is funded in part by Torsion, infiltrated by Torsion and Maria Butina, these Russian operatives. Alexander Torsion is one of Putin's buddies. He's a guy who engineered, as Aaron Harris explained on the Prevail podcast last week when we talked about Volume 5, Torsion was the Russian politician or minister, whatever he was, who presided over the sham investigation into the thing that happened in Russia when the Chechen separatists seized the school.
Yeah, I remember
and then
that.
the Russian military came in, and then there was a standoff, and then suddenly the Russians were like, fuck it, we're going to kill everybody. And he whitewashed that thing to make it seem like it was the Chechens that were responsible when it was the Russians. Torsion did that. That was Torsion's doing.
Nice
he
guy.
Whitewashed this thing. Then he went to Spain and was laundering money for whatever the Russian crime.
Yeah, Mijas. For Mijas, yeah, he was. He's a major gangster. It's not a joke, guys. This guy's.
This is who he is. This motherfucker. Okay.
Yeah.
Friends with Blackburn, the Tennessee lady, the senator.
Yeah.
Marsha.
Hobnobs with all these people. Okay. His friends flew from Russia to wherever it was, I forget where, to hang out with the president of the NRA at his birthday party, stayed for 2 hours, got back in a plane, went back to Russia. That's Torsion. That's the influence that they have over the NRA. So every time there's a shooting like this, you have to ask yourself, who wants these weapons on the street? Who wants no regulations on this? It's not normal people. It's not even normal rank and file people in the NRA. It is the politicians who are owned by the Torsion-influenced, Russian-influenced NRA. That's who it is. It's Mitch McConnell and these NRA people, okay? And who benefits when there's a mass shooting in the United States globally? Putin. That's who benefits. Vladimir Putin benefits because it makes us look like losers, like we can't regulate our own stuff, like we can't get out of our own way. It makes us look weak and inept, and we are not weak and inept.
And violent. So, and violent and hypocritical. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the answer to the shootings, not the police shootings, that's its own thing, which is also horrible and happened this week. But the mass shootings with these assault weapons, Mitch McConnell is responsible. The Republican senators are responsible. So every time there's a shooting, that is more blood on their hands. And I don't know what's got to happen with this filibuster or whatever these fuckheads are with this. But how many goddamn people have to die? Okay? I don't know. But I hope what happens is that they come down, the AG, the new AG, Merrick Garland comes down. All we have to do to get rid of this thing is arrest some senators who are involved with the insurrection. Maybe if we arrest Hawley and we arrest Ted Cruz, then we'll have a little more leeway with these two people, right? And Mitch McConnell...
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know what will happen, but I'm telling you, blue states are more populous. We have more people, a lot more people. We have a lot more money. We're the economic fucking driver of the country and the whole goddamn fucking world. And we can't figure out a way to take power away from this evil minority, as you said before, Zev, criminal organization that has infiltrated one of our two political parties. I don't know what needs to be done, but we have to figure this out.
We have the Senate. What? I'm freaking out. I can't believe. What the fuck? Bring the bills to the floor. How is Mitch McConnell still in control? Everyone's because he has a filibuster. You don't need. You can bring bills to the floor. The Senate Majority Leader can bring bills to the floor.
That is true. Didn't we learn last time?
Where the fuck is that?
That there was a path as well with the for Kamala. Can't Kamala involve itself as the?
I don't know. There has to be a solution. There's more of us. There's millions and millions more of us. Okay?
It's
These guys
insane.
are they're the slave states. They're the vestiges of the slave states. These guys are Senator Hammond in 1858 or whatever it was, doing the mudsill theory, arguing that the southern states are better because they at least acknowledge that they have slaves and the northern states just keep wage slaves. That's who they are. They're the antecedents, or the, what's the word I'm looking for? The outgrowth of that.
Yeah.
The descendants of
Descendants.
that. They are
Descendants.
fucking evil. And they're allowing this to happen. And I don't know what needs to happen to do it. I don't know if we need to.
Right. Here's the big narrative that ties it all back to the beginning of where this show started. Okay. Look at Georgia. The Republican Party is very clear now and very forthright with the fact that it is done with representative democracy. It's done with it. It doesn't believe it doesn't want it anymore. It knows, it fears the changing demographics. They're saying it out loud now. They're starting their own white supremacist groups and committees, and that you have, their propagandists keep pushing for this. They're just going all in on, we've got to get rid of democracy. That's their thing. They're trying to end democracy because they know they're a dead, dying party in terms of representative democracy, in terms of voting public. They know this. They see that you had 20 years ago, or 15 years ago at least, we had, what was his name? Bill O'Reilly, and you had Rush Limbaugh pushing, because they could see the demographic change, and they were like going all in on that, and fear mongering and doing all this. And now we have today state legislatures going in and saying, if we don't like in Republican states saying, passing election laws that basically say, if we don't like the way that the voters voted, that the state legislature has the right to throw it all out and just choose who's going to be, right? To do this thing that Donald Trump was on the phone with the Georgia, and on the phone, I think we'll find out with Pennsylvania, muscling people's like, just find the votes you need, or just throw those votes out. It's all this whole thing. They're done with it. They're done with it. That's what the insurrection was. They are fucking done with democracy. The Republicans are. It is in their way now of their power. So they want it gone. That's why they installed a Kremlin asset as a fucking president in 2016. They could have stopped that. They could have. They knew who he was.
They wanted that. That's what they did. That's what they were in favor of that.
They installed him.
The thing
because they want it to end.
The left can do the same stuff. They just choose not to. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a inherent respect. I don't know what it is. It's not respect, but we sort of accept that they somehow have a position of authority in this country. All these, racist Republicans, somehow they have authority because, I don't know, they said they were here first. The reality of it is, everyone has an equal vote. And if Democrats wanted to start infringing on white people's rights to vote, and then they could do the same thing, or certainly of right-wingers' right to vote. They could do the same thing. We just choose not to, because we sort of believe that there's an acceptable way, acceptable path, an acceptable rule of law, and a constitution we want to follow. But we don't have to do that. But there is a deference that we provide them, which sort of lets them get away with this crap. Like, they shouldn't be allowed to get away with this. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with Georgia. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with the insurrection. They shouldn't be allowed to, but they're going to get away with all of it.
Okay, so that's the key, not doing the dirty planning, right? The key is, if we don't, with this new administration and with this new leadership in the Justice Department, if there is no either will for the laws of our nation and priority of the laws of our nation, that no one's above the law, and there's no political will coming out of the administration or in the Congress or the Senate for those elected Democratic leaders, chicken the fuck out and pressure and say, no, we can't go. You can't arrest Hawley, right? Or we can't prosecute these crimes, or you can't prosecute a former president for, let's even talk about the COVID deaths, right? That we cannot bring these criminals to account, even though we have the gun, the bullet, the body, that we have all the evidence and all the crime, that somehow that it's a political thing and not a justice thing, and that and we behave that way as a nation. Our leadership now does not have the courage to bring these fucking criminals to justice for what they're doing, then that is the ceding of our democracy. That means that's the giving up of it. It really, and if the people in power can't understand that those are the stakes, that those are the real stakes, we are not through this. We are not through the eye of the needle of this yet. If this party, this Republican Party, as it is right now, not looking back and being nostalgic about it, but for what it is right now in this moment, this fascistic party that's authoritarian, that wants to do away with democracy, that's trying to dismantle it, that's literally trying to write laws on a state level to throw out the votes of Black Americans. That's what they're doing. Let's not dance around this, right? They're going back. Mm-hmm. They're going back into the days where it's like women and Black, like they're going for it. They're going regressive in that way. If that party is allowed to gain back its power in the House and the Senate and have its majority, it is game over. I'm not trying to be catastrophic and Debbie whatever.
For a while, it would be game over. There's no doubt about it.
We have to fight. We have to keep getting in there. We have to win these elections, and we have to pressure our leadership to actually prosecute these individuals and this party for the crimes that they committed against us for almost 5 years.
You know what would be really popular amongst the most Americans is if the Democrats became the law and order party. And if they insisted that law and order be inflicted on these criminal and Republican Party leaders, because that's really what needs to happen. There's no one standing up for law and order anymore. Nobody's doing it. And we really need Democrats to start doing it. And it will be a very popular position for centrist Americans who care about real law and order, not the kind that might be meted out by the police in these terrible ways.
Law, you can say
rule
that.
of law. Rule of law is a better way of saying it. We really need someone to stand up for that. And all Americans are in favor of that. Most Americans are in favor of that. And we've allowed this criminal party to just sort of, take control of so many of our states to the point where they're holding everyone else hostage.
Yeah.
Just a quick point. It's now 8:07 p.m., April 16th, 2021. And I look forward to joining you guys on April 16th in 2026 when Rachel Maddow announces live on air that the Republican Party is actually working to undermine democracy. I'm really excited for this. Fucking catch up, media.
I'll be there.
Morons. Jesus Christ.
I know. I was watching with
fury. I don't want to take too many hits. I know.
But they're better than most, so you can't really take hits on them. But
they're better than most. I took my hit. I took my swing tonight. I do, but it is important to kind of understand the corporatization of news is not working for democracy, and it's not even a passive, irrelevant thing. It's actually part of the attack on democracy. And
why do you think those networks are worth so much? Why do you think so many investors buy those networks? They're worth it because they have a lot of influence and they can put up whatever they want in the sub-hour news and in the morning news. And that's what they are able to, wield against Americans.
And it's really important for everyone to grasp that news, when it comes to cable and when it comes to broadcast, that those are entertainment companies. I know that the journalists on it, they would consider this so offensive that I'm saying this, but they are underneath the entertainment studios, which are underneath the bigger corporate overlords. So they are part, in all cases, they are part of content. Mm-hmm. They are content deliverers. They have agents that are the same talent agents as actors and actresses. It's all part of one studio system machine now. And it's that sort of that holy ground, that sacred ground that used to be where the newsrooms were kept out of all of that, right? Yeah. It's not the case anymore. It's about monetizing that content for the advertisers and making sure that it's entertaining and it's produced in a tight manner. It's not, that is the priority. And everyone defers to the attorneys. And this is happening in print as well. And the attorneys are now in there on behalf of the corporate ownerships, determining whether people want to believe what I'm saying or not. It is happening. You can talk to
I can tell you 100%. That's the way those newsrooms work. I've been there. That's what they do.
They can't get it past the corporate attorneys. So where attorneys and newsrooms used to be about You guys do whatever you're going to do, and we will be there to fight and protect your right to do the stories that you feel that you have to do. We'll fight for you in the court because this is part of a constitutionally protected job and institution, right? The Fourth Estate. They now are in front of the stories. They're in front of everything, so that if you have someone like a Kellyanne Conway picking up the phone and screaming at the head of business affairs, as screaming at the programmers, screaming at the head of the network, you can't do this, you can't play this, blah, 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 we're going to sue you, we're going to that makes everybody go, oh, right? They back off. And next thing you know, you're not getting the gun, the bullet, the body, the forensics, the confession,
because
and
everyone keeps their jobs and they're makeup people. The interesting thing for me is that these licenses on which they broadcast, they don't own the channels. They license the channels from the people.
Right.
People own the airwaves.
Only on the networks, though.
Yeah, but all the free-to-air broadcasts, all the local stations, all the local stations.
I don't think, do they even? But does that even exist anymore? Because
the local stations are still the main stations, and then they have also the other cable stations next to them. That's a lot of money comes out of those local stations. People still watch those stations, and they're the main part of the networks. But all of those licenses are not they're not owned by the networks themselves or by the station owners. They're given to them by the people for doing the job that we're describing, giving us independent, smart, and responsible public news. So that's why they have these licenses. They're just breaking them. So I think there's a real argument, and I think we could do this in every market in the country, for people to start arguing, if they're not happy with their local stations, that their licenses should be taken away and returned to the people so they could give it to someone who's going to do a responsible job with the news. And
that's when a lot of people talk about bringing back the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine would not get rid of the cable news.
The fairness doctrine is about balance. It's this whole balance idea that you've got to include other people.
The fairness doctrine also made it so that if you were doing it, like, there has to be news on the radio every, twice in an hour, whatever, things like that.
It's about the content,
pucker, like actual news. So
one of the things that I think also they tried to do with that fairness doctrine was you couldn't own every station in the market. Now, one big entity can own like 5 stations in the market, or at least 3 of them.
Right.
And so you control a bunch of news in one station. You control everything. That's not okay. That's just doesn't. You need variety of voices. You need other people to access those networks, and you need different points of view. Otherwise, you land up with no competition, and you get just propaganda, which is what we're seeing.
Then take that back to Paul Manafort as well. What did we learn in his indictments outside of the Konstantin Kilimnik revelations? By the way, we still need all the underlying evidence of the Mueller report as well as the entire Mueller report unredacted. It needs to be unredacted. This is ridiculous.
Volume 5 too.
Volume 5 as well. But Paul Manafort, the old school craft of running influence ops outside, before the Facebook Cambridge Analytica and whatever becomes of that, right, has become of that, the Emerdata, and it's gotten way more sophisticated than even clunky old Cambridge Analytica, right? But before all of that, before this sort of ability to target and define and refine and drill down into individual profiles and scraping data and all that, it was just, and Paul Manafort was still doing this in Ukraine, and he did it for Donald as well. It was picking up the phone and getting the New York Times or the Washington Post or Tucker Carlson to run with your version of a story that was written and crafted, especially for print, that was written and crafted by paid foreign agents of whatever state, right? So that one big way to actually bring some real integrity back into our news, and I've been saying this as well for years and years, is extend the FARA, right? Extend the Foreign Agent Registration Act to where if you are a news organization, let's say you're cable news, you're print news, and you're going to run in print, they'll run a piece paid for by Qatar, right? But you have to go read the whole thing, and then you get down the bottom of it. It says, this is from a blah, 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 blah. That needs to be right at the top. This person is a paid foreign agent. They are running a piece of propaganda on behalf of their client. That has to be above with the headline. And then when you go into cable news or even broadcast, if someone like Michael Caputo is showing up on screen to be an opinionist, right, that it needs to say right above him, right, or the chyron below, paid for an agent of Russia or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Twitter does it now. Google does it.
Hold the news, right? Hold the news organizations. If they knew that if they're going to put somebody on and not vet them, and that person is unregistered, right, or that they don't put that on there, that they actually suffer a violation under that act because they're profiting off of it. They're raising advertising money on it. They're getting circulation. They're getting subscription fees off of it. They're making money off that content that is paid for, crafted, and provided by often a hostile foreign power, maybe even someone who's on a sanction list. So if you're going to do that, news orgs, and you don't label it, I just want labels like the cigarette packs. I'm not trying to infringe on anyone's First Amendment. Just label this fucking shit so people
put it
know
all over prime time and Fox News.
Know what they're consuming, and then if they don't do that, they're going to be hit with these FAR violations. And if they do it in coordination and cooperation with hostile foreign actors or people on a sanction list, they're going to get slapped with a fucking RICO as well. You're now in a conspiracy to defraud. You're making money off of the fraud. That's easy. That's taking our existing laws and expanding it, and it doesn't infringe on anyone's First Amendment. We're just labeling.
I'm even okay with infringing on people's First Amendments if there are networks that are being run by foreign agents like Russia Today or Newsmax or whatever. Honestly, get rid of them. They do not need to be on the airwaves at all. But everyone else, if they're being paid for occasionally, then they should be absolutely they should say that. Can I just say one last thing before we go about the Kalimnik thing today? Because it really struck me that in order for this thing to be held in secret by the intelligence community and kept away from Trump for presumably the whole term, it must have been all 4 years that they were holding back a ton of information that they knew was going on. They couldn't tell him because he'd either lose it or he'll fire them. There was a whole structure created around intelligence and military and a bunch of places by Barack Obama in the last few weeks of his administration, which saved the republic. Because I really believe that what he did then, he did two things that were really important. He disseminated a ton of information, like more CIA files and more FBI files than you've ever seen, to as far away as places as he could, and distributed it so they couldn't be destroyed, but they could also be accessed by as many people as they needed. And then he created sort of a substructure which gained some of the authorities that he had that where would have been considered like war powers in some of those, in some of earlier administrations, and he gave them to the secretaries of defense and their undersecretaries. And what that did is it took the power away from Donald Trump, and it also gave him very little access to the real information, so that he was able to put the White House, the Trump White House, in a bit of a cocoon, shielded away from what was really going on. And then under that, I think the intelligence community was doing a lot of work, and they've been sitting on that work for 4 years, or at least haven't been revealing it publicly. And I think that what we're seeing now with all the consternation on the networks of, when did you know? How did you know it? Well, they knew it all along. And what they did is they worked with it and they got it out to as many people as they could. But they were still running a counterintelligence operation underneath Trump without him knowing it. And I think that's all because of President Barack Obama. I really do. And he's brilliant thinking in the last few weeks of his administration. So today's up to him, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just described what got weaponized and called the deep state.
I mean,
but
not
it was,
really.
But
Not really.
no.
Sure?
I'm doing. That's a compliment. They knew that this had happened. The Trump administration and his cronies, and they flailed about it. But there was nothing they could do. And then I think it's also speaks to the other side of it. There's plenty that could have been revealed. I was an advocate for it coming out. I've taken some big hits for that, but I stand by that because I was talking to people in the intelligence community who were, and there were people vocally, even John Brennan, they need to come out and say what they know. They need to come. You had all of these big leaders at the time throughout 2017, 2018, begging for a lot to become revealed because of how dangerous that president was. And we knew how dangerous. We knew there would be mass suffering. I don't think anybody could quite tell what it was going to show up as. And then now we have 500,000 Americans that were needlessly slaughtered by that intentionally failed pandemic response, of which someone needs to be held accountable. That's the cost of not surfacing information when it could have made a difference. And we don't really know what the war was behind the scenes and what a fight. We do know that I have no doubt that our intelligence community was under vicious attack by Trump.
Mhm.
And his people, constant attack. His first day, it wasn't even his first full day in office. He went to the CIA, Wall of Stars, to holy ground, sacred ground, and he took a dump on it. He really did. He was there. They were calling him brown shirts. They were calling him Nazis. So I was an advocate, and I will never back off that position of, I wish that information on Donald Trump, there's so much information on him personally, had been surfaced when it needed to be surfaced to stop this man, because he was absolutely going to slaughter people, and he absolutely did. But now, if it doesn't end up coming to the surface in the way that it needs to, so that we can have justice and these people can be held accountable, I don't know what's being protected. I don't understand what's being protected by all that secrecy.
Well, the one thing on Obama, I think, once they were all anticipating Clinton was going to win. So they weren't needing to release any more information on Trump, because they thought he was going to just, not succeed. I think when it became apparent that he was going to win for whatever reasons, obviously now we know Russian help was involved. That's what I'm talking about. His actions then were very, very important.
In
terms of saving the Republic. I agree with you that it would be great to have a lot more information about Trump earlier on. Of course, that's a real failing that wasn't released.
Let's not look. He didn't go public with the Russia stuff with McConnell. He bowed to McConnell and didn't go public in July about Trump's involvement with Russia, which he fucking knew about. And he could have made Glenn Kirshner a special counsel the day after Thanksgiving 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And given him a super wide berth, unlimited budget, just go find all the criminals and put them away. And he didn't do that.
Well, he was
Instead, this secret bullshit. So I'm not so great.
Knowing the anger in the community.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah. I don't know. I
the Republic almost died
fan,
because he fucked up the last year, and I will stand by that.
I do think I think they had him in a bit of a straitjacket too, because of whatever disinformation campaigns they were running. So it's not.
Yeah. The president. He was the president from November through January. He had 2 full months to do stuff. He did that great. He did not go far enough, and then he left and went
easy to say in hindsight.
Windsurfing for 2 months in the South Pacific.
Well, I think he felt that he had secured some stuff. But what was the key person you just said in there? McConnell. Mm-hmm. McConnell knew. He knew.
They all knew.
They all knew, and they still installed that fucker. And then they protected him. They did. And he slaughtered 500,000 Americans. He slaughtered them. We've lost way more than 500,000. We've lost so many. But as even the doctor that Frau Birx admitted, right? Finally, that Frau, she admitted, right, that it's like the first 100,000, there's probably nothing we could have done, but everything after that was a preventable death. Well, and that's not even to mention the millions of people infected and what they have to deal with. My voice is never going back. That's a little tiny itty bitty thing, but I was fucking infected. It's not, it changed something for me. I don't know if it's if I'm gonna deal with this shit in other ways, right? I have no idea. So,
a lot of people are going to deal with it. I do.
Breaking the glass. We should have broken the glass on him during his presidency, and open up the files and let all the secrets fly. What's the point? What were we supposed to be protecting? To have all this secrecy was about, at the end of the day, making sure that something as catastrophic to the Republic, like an asset of our enemy's intelligence services becoming president of the United States. I would think if there's ever a time to break the glass and say, bring everybody back from the field, we got to tell the American people what's going on here, that would have been the circumstance.
We just don't have a mechanism to get rid of the presidents other than impeachments. I mean, that's what we have. So, we need to either relook at that, which is going to be very controversial, but we don't have another way of doing it as far as we know. Yeah, but you're right. Hey, we should go.
We gotta go.
You gotta go. What a fun show! Interesting stuff. It's our Christmas edition in April because hey, it's been Christmas. It is nice to be proven right. I mean, even though it's been a while, it's good that we've proven right. I mean, that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we didn't. I'm trying to find a silver lining to this thing, but it is good news that whatever it is
The
we were
silver-
saying for
The silver
4
lining
years.
of the week is the sanctions that he hit Russia with.
Yeah,
That's the
Yeah.
silver lining.
that's true. Although he's also making
That's
friends with them. What's this thing that he's doing this? That's what did Clinton have, the reset button? I feel like we're reliving the reset button by.
We're not reliving the reset.
I hope we're not reliving
That's
the
not what's
reset button, because it's all this, encroachment and friendliness on some issues, but not on these issues, but on that issues. I don't know. It makes me concerned a little bit, but we'll see. I have a lot of faith in this government.
We'll see. I think there's some really big stakes right now for Ukraine and for the region in other ways, in other places, and also for Navalny. And I think, and I'm giving this, right? I don't know. I just think this. I'm trying to be generous right now. I think there's a little bit of it's not reset, but it's definitely, okay, we're going to point to where we could work together to try to pull things back from this very hot moment.
Absolutely.
And not agitate this murderer, this mass murderer, right? To try to save some lives here and pull things back from the brink.
I agree.
We'll see.
Yeah, but there's still too many sort of madmen running the world. We need Bibi and Putin and the whole lot of them to go away, because they shouldn't be in power in so-called democracies.
It's always been
It
us.
was always.
There's always been madmen running the world.
That's true. What a note to end tonight. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, though.
Narrative is funded by viewers like you who support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. I was away for a couple of days for the first time in over a year. It was such a good opportunity to be on the road, and it felt so good. It also gave me a chance to catch up on no less than 8 books in one 2-hour drive. And that's because I was using this incredible app called Blinkist. It's hard to find the time to sit down and read and learn more. So when you don't have that free time, you can't read or work on your personal development. That's really annoying. Blinkist is really unique, and it works on your phone, your tablet, or your web browser. Blinkist takes the best key takeaways, the need-to-know information from thousands of nonfiction books, and condenses them down to just 15 minutes each that you can read or listen to. Right now, for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/reach. Try it free for 7 days and save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist. Blinkist.com/reach to start your free 7-day trial. And you'll also save 25% off, but only when you go and sign up right now at Blinkist.com/narrative.